This episode of Gators Breakdown is brought to you by BetterHelp. Prioritize your well-being. If you need support along the way, BetterHelp has got you covered. Visit betterhelp.com/gators and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/gators.
We got Gators Breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. And yes, the Gators have a game this weekend against Mississippi State going to Starkville. The noon Eastern, 11 a.m. local kickoff. Could be a sleepy kickoff there. We've seen that before, of course, in Starkville. So that's what the Gators have in front of them. Another game, of course, that we will still discuss the football aspect of all this, while all the coaching kind of steals the headlines right now in Billy Napier's job security. So, could be Billy Napier's last game as head coach. We don't know that. I mean, that's certainly another storyline, I'm sure, that will be discussed in the telecast. I know that has been discussed around here as well. So, bye week coming up after that. So, one more game to get there. Keep it going. Gators Breakdown Plus, if you want to keep that conversation going. Extra episode, Discord chat. I mean, especially with just all the coaching talk, is just on fire right now. A whole lot of talk about Napier and who potentially could be the next coach. So I just got through just chatting right there before I came right here and started recording Gators Breakdown. So ad-free episodes as well this time of year. I know getting a lot of ads football season, taking advantage there. But if you want those ad-free episodes of Gators Breakdown, you get them right there on Gators Breakdown Plus. We'll be doing a chat this week as well. So everybody hit that like button. Subscribe right here on Gators Breakdown, right here on your podcast platform or on YouTube. But smash that like button right here on YouTube. It really, really helps us out. And coming up later this episode as well, focus on the Gators with Alex Shepard as we do every week. Take a look back at the Texas A&M game, some of his photos from there, and also just all the talk surrounding Billy Napier. All right, let's get to the preview. Mississippi State 1-2 on the season. Kicked off the season with a 56-7 victory over FCS Eastern Kentucky, and then followed that up with a 30-23 comeback loss at Arizona State. And then last week, a surprising 41-17 loss at home to Toledo. Ouch. Take a look at some stats right here. Stat comparison. Both teams playing 3 games so far. So you could kind of still early in the season, so these could be skewed. I mean, a lot of Florida stats are skewed by the Samford game. Mississippi State skewed by their FCS opening opponent as well. So not a whole. I mean, it's a lot of bad when you start looking at statistical categories here for Florida and Mississippi State. 2 bad teams, two of the worst SEC teams going at it on Saturday. Though in Vanderbilt as well, they do have a winning against Virginia Tech, but lost to Georgia State last week. So Florida, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, unfortunately for the Gators, will be fighting amongst them for worst team in the SEC. This game Saturday will go a long way in determining that. As you see, a whole lot of bad here. Total offense. Florida is 72nd in the country. Mississippi State is 82nd in the country. Florida about 398 yards a game. Mississippi State 375 yards a game. Florida with an 82nd scoring offense. Mississippi State with a 59th scoring offense. Mississippi State averaging 32 points a game. Florida 27.3. Florida does hold the rushing advantage there when you start comparing run games, but both in the triple digits, both offenses in the hundreds. Florida 102, dead last. No, not dead last in the SEC. Next, because there are 16 teams now. Mississippi State is dead last in the SEC in rushing offense. Florida, 119 yards a game. Mississippi State, only 98 yards a game. Florida tied for 39th in the country in passing. A lot of that boosted by the Samford game, of course. So hard to take away much from that. Mississippi State's 43rd. They're 278 yards a game. Florida's at 279. Keeping it going, let's go to total defense. Florida 106th in the country. Mississippi State 94th. Florida giving up 407 yards a game. Mississippi State 388. Scoring defenses about equal. Both right there in about in the 90s. Florida giving up 27 points a game. Mississippi State giving up 26 points a game. Both rushing defenses, just like the offenses, in triple digits. Both of them. Florida, 102nd in the country in rushing defense with 171.67 yards given up. Mississippi State giving up 213 yards on the ground. Not great at all. So one more time. Florida 102 in the country. Mississippi State 122nd. Florida 92nd in pass defense, while Mississippi State's 45th. Mississippi State only gives up 174 yards through the air. Florida giving up 235. Turnover margin, not great for either team there. Florida minus 1.3. Mississippi State 0.3. Neither team, they're dead even in takeaways and interceptions. 2 takeaways for both teams, 1 interception. This is where you're going to start taking a look at it. Sacks allowed. Mississippi State tied for 121st in the country, giving up 10 sacks so far this year. Not great. Can Florida's defense take advantage there? Keeping it going to end this. Florida with 5 sacks on the season. Mississippi State, only 3 sacks on the season. That's 76 in the country for Florida, 109th for Mississippi State. Tackles for loss, Mississippi State, 127th in the country with only 10. Florida with 16, it ties them for 77th in the country. Once again, that's kind of boosted up by the Stanford game as well. All right. So Eastern Kentucky, just like Stanford, doesn't tell us a whole lot about Mississippi State and Florida. So going back, let's go back a couple weeks ago. 2 games ago, when the Bulldogs faced off against Arizona State. So while the final score was a 1-score final, 30-23, it was a 27-3 lead at halftime for Arizona State. They were up 30-3 at one point in the third quarter. Before the Bulldogs started closing the gap, it was 30-23 with 5:27 left in the game. Mississippi State couldn't complete the comeback because they never even got the ball back. They could not get off the field on defense. Sun Devils rushed for over 200 yards in the first half. They finished with 348 yards on the ground against an SEC defense. Now, granted, first-year coach Jeff Levy, but man, 348 yards to the Big 12's Arizona State Sun Devils. That marked the first time since 2016 the Bulldogs have allowed over 300 yards on the ground. As a team, the Sun Devils averaged over 6 yards a carry. On the other side, it was all passing that got the Bulldogs back in that game. They had issues running the ball, as you just saw there in the stats. Mississippi State finished with just 24 team rushing yards on 27 carries. Blake Shapen was sacked 4 times, contributing to that, but still, 24 team rushing yards for 27 carries. Could not get the ground game going. There's your story for that game. And then, holy Toledo. Last Saturday, the Toledo Rockets rolled into Starkville and put it on the Bulldogs 41-17. Toledo, 41-17 over Mississippi State. There were points during the first half of that game last Saturday night. Toledo raced out to a 28-3 halftime lead. It was 35-3 at one point. And Mississippi State just looked like they didn't even want to be there for that game. Just interested in blocking. There's maybe more on that. This was not physical at all, much like a Florida team. Not blocking. They didn't tackle well versus Toledo. Toledo finished that game with 168 yards after the catch. They had no answer for Toledo's quick passing game. Tucker Gleason for Toledo, a lot of underneath routes. He finished the night 23-28, 285 yards and 3 touchdowns. Easy for him. Stats bear that out. 169 yards and 2 touchdowns on the Rockets for the ground game. They scored touchdowns, Toledo did, on 4 of their first 5 drives of the game. And then Mississippi State, not even in the game at that point mentally. Toledo finished with nearly 500 yards of offense, 26 first downs, scored on 5 of their 6 trips to the red zone. 5 of their 6 trip overall to the red zone they scored. So it wasn't a fluke. They dominated Mississippi State. Mississippi State that bad? I think we'll get our answer Saturday. I think it's hard to believe that they are that bad. Certainly off the slow starts against Arizona State and Toledo. That's going to be a storyline here. For a second straight game, Mississippi State opened up that game with 2 3-and-outs to start the game. Ran 9 total plays in the first quarter versus Toledo. And, it'd be okay if you were scoring touchdowns. There's a lot of offenses out there that can just put up points pretty quick. Mississippi State we'll get into that a little bit too. But the last couple of games, not great. But against Toledo, nope. 9 total plays in the first quarter. 8 total yards, no first downs. They continue to lack any ability for a run game. They finished 66 yards and 27 carries. So 2 games in a row, they could not get the run game going. Blake Shapen had his worst game so far after he transfers in. He was sacked 5 times against Toledo. 5 times against Toledo. He finished 29 of 39 for 319 yards, 2 touchdown passes, and an interception on the final play of the first half. Also had a fumble. So much like Florida, Mississippi State head coach Jeff Lebby said following Saturday night's loss that the Bulldogs are still looking to find the 5-man rotation for the offensive line that helps them succeed in both the run game and pass protection. So with struggling offensive lines, we see it here in Gainesville, and they see it there in Starkville, still trying to figure out the pieces. So in the last 2 weeks, like I said, get rid of the FCS opening game. In the past 2 weeks, Mississippi State's defense has allowed over 800 yards of offense, over 35 points a game. The offense has had its issues too, of course, in the past 2 weeks. Taking too long to get going, falling behind 3+ scores in back-to-back games, and, of course, not having enough in the tank to complete a comeback. In the 2 losses, the Bulldogs are averaging just 20 points per game, average 45 rushing yards per game, averaging 3 points in the first half of those games. And in those 2 losses, they've gone combined 7 times on 3-and-out. They've had 3-and-out 7 times. So they're struggling. Very, very inconsistent offense. They have to get off to a fast start, as they did not score a touchdown of any sort in the first half against either Arizona State or Toledo. No touchdowns the last 2 games. Compare that to the second half, where they have 5 touchdowns in those 4 quarters. Almost 2/3 of their yardage is in the second half, and 60% of their first downs have been in the second half. They are an offense that wants to score fast. They can score fast. On the year, 6 of its 11 offensive touchdowns in 5 plays or less. And of the Bulldogs' 11 touchdowns this season, they've scored 5 touchdowns in under 2 minutes, 3 touchdowns in under 32 seconds, and 2 touchdowns under 15 seconds. So, of course, go back to that opener. That's where a lot of it's taken off. Or the second half of these games with a very, very slow start. So, of course, Lebby, a lot of reputation for a high-flying offense, being around high-flying offenses. Want to score fast, want to go tempo. That's probably some of the issues in the first half of these games. They just can't get it going. Finally clicks in the second half, too little, too late. Against Toledo, both touchdowns came on an extended series of 13 and 11 snaps, covering a combined 152 yards. For that matter, the first half field goal was on a 12-play drive for 64 yards. Then 4 or so minutes taken on scoring drives last weekend. It matched up with 2 of the 3 touchdowns at Arizona State. So the fast scoring mostly week 1. So this is going to be a game of some bad offenses. The Gators are next to last in SEC scoring, aren't that far ahead of Mississippi State in time of possession. Just despite, like I said, differing styles here. Florida slowing the game down a bit. Mississippi State speeding the game up, but both pretty much struggling right here. Which team can get off to a fast start on offense? I think that's probably what you're looking at for this game. We know Florida against Miami, Texas A&M. I mean, even Sanford to a point, 14 points at halftime. Florida's offense not getting off to a good start. Last couple of games for Mississippi State against like opponents. Or not even like, Toledo's not supposed to do that to Mississippi State. So 2 games in a row for them where they just can't get going. So these are some offenses that just cannot get it going early in games. So which team gets off to a better start? The schedule has gotten harder. I mean, Toledo is actually a pretty good team for the MAC. Still, that shouldn't happen. So 2 struggling offenses here, especially in the get it going early portion. So let's go. Players to watch for the Bulldogs offense. Quarterback Blake Shapen. Shapen has thrown a touchdown pass in 14 straight games. That's what I said. He just transferred in for Mississippi State. Now, if you're a fan of Pro Football Focus, Shapen's season passing grade from Pro Football Focus of 91.5 ranked 4th nationally and 2nd in the SEC among qualified quarterbacks. His overall offensive grade of 90.8 is tied for 4th in the FBS and 3rd in the SEC. And the transfer wide receiver mostly plays in the slot, Kevin Coleman Jr. He transfer as well. Number 5 in the SEC. Number 21 in the country in all-purpose yards per game with 131.3. He leads the nation in all-purpose yards per play, 17.9. He had an 80-yard touchdown reception against Arizona State. He has 5 15-plus yard receptions. That's good for 3rd in the SEC. So you got to watch out for Coleman. Kevin Coleman, that's the name to look out for when Florida's on defense. After what we've seen so far for the Gators defense this year, this is probably the best chance to get something going up front against a name opponent. Of course, Florida dominated havoc-wise against Sanford, but nothing against Miami, nothing against Texas A&M. This will be by far the worst offensive line Florida will face the rest of the way. So many new pieces for the Bulldogs offensive line, but even with that, they're passing the ball well. Still ranking 38th in success rate passing the ball. So I'm interested. I'm really interested to see how the Bulldogs attack because, they can't run the ball. But Florida just got slaughtered last week, bulldozed by Texas A&M. But, knowing Florida's struggles in the defensive backfield, communication, giving up easy plays, making it just too easy for the opponent, no attacking style there, paired with Mississippi State's ability to pass the ball and not run the ball, I think Jeff Levy probably just lets it fly. If I was him, that's what I would be doing. Now, maybe they see something in Florida's run defense they can take advantage of, but they haven't been able to run the ball. Maybe after Texas A&M last week, they identify something as well. Texas A&M, I think, as I said in last week's preview for that game, really tore up Florida. I mean, they tore up the run defense altogether, but really on the edges, like I thought they would. Like I said they would. Does Mississippi State even try to do the same thing or just let the ball fly? Player to watch for defense on the Bulldogs, linebacker Isaac Smith, tied for the national lead in total tackles with 43. Of course, that leads the SEC as well. But 43 total tackles in just 3 games. The next closest SEC player has just 33 tackles through 3 weeks. So through the 3 games, Smith has been the team's leading tackler in all 3 games. But you just saw all the stats I shared earlier. Overall, this defense is pretty terrible for Mississippi State. They do nothing well. They don't create havoc. They can't stuff the run. So this may be a chance where Napier can lean on the ground game like he wants to help the Gators offense. Given Mississippi State probably now plays this as a, not want to give up the big play and make Florida earn it. I think Florida will kind of just fall into that trap. I think Billy Napier will be more than willing to try and take advantage on the ground. It's kind of been a theme this week. He mentioned it on Monday that, that's what gets our offense going. I asked him about maybe trying to adjust it to the passing game. He says, of course, it depends on opponent, but when have we ever really seen that? So this may just be a get-right game for the Florida ground attack. But I think Billy Napier has probably seen that, probably licking his chops that, hey, we might can finally play my brand of football here. So Florida's offense, looking for long drives maybe. Can't mess those up. Probably going to have to work your way down the field. Mississippi State, I think, is going to play this. Let's just not give up explosives. Try not to get down so big as they have in the last couple of weeks. So if the ground game's ever going to get going, it'll need to be this game for Florida. Not sure how the quarterbacks will be used this week, of course, with Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway. Not sure it matters when looking at what Mississippi State's been pretty bad at in stopping the run. That has, in my mind, going with all the quarterback questions, has Napier going that route. We can't win without the run game. I don't think he's ever really adapted to go away from it. No matter the quarterback, no matter the receivers he's brought in, Billy Napier wants to run the ball. So given Mississippi State struggling there, I think he's just going to try it. So there's something, I think, positive to look for. Florida's ground game to get going. If that happens, Florida probably wins this game. I just don't know if it gets there. I don't like this overall situation for Florida. I think Florida should win, but I don't think they will. No, I'm not trying to pile on here. Florida's not been great overall under Billy Napier, but been worse, even worse on the road. The gap that was supposed to be between these two teams heading into the season, well, it's not as wide as we thought it was weeks ago. And I'm not sure where this team is mentally. I am not going to say the team has given up, but all the conversation surrounding Napier has to be distracting, no matter what they say publicly. The distraction has to be there. The noise is there. If Florida wins, I'm not going to chalk this up as a sense of urgency or playing for Billy Napier because all that stuff should have already been there. If Florida wins, it's just simply because they're better. And at this moment, I just don't see it happening. I'm still in prove-it mode, even against a team as bad as Mississippi State. Maybe that's the wrong way to look at it, but I have to see this team get a win. Now, I know Mississippi State just got pounded by Toledo. To me, it doesn't matter. So many opportunities, especially going back to that Arkansas game last year, so many opportunities where you say Florida should not lose to this team. Florida should not lose a game like that. Well, I think that continues. It was not competitive at all versus Miami. Not really all that competitive versus Texas A&M. The score was closer than that game indicated. I have 27-24 Mississippi State. They'll hit enough explosive passes to be the difference. I think Florida's offense probably has some success in running the ball. I do not believe in this Florida defense whatsoever. 27-24 Mississippi State. Now, we'll see. It's not really going to affect my decision all that much recording this before the first injury report of the week comes out on Wednesday night. See what that means for guys like Trey Wilson and others, but won't change my outlook. So there you go. Florida, Mississippi State preview. Noon Eastern. Right there Saturday. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Hey, look, life gets hectic. I understand it. Believe me. You got so much on your plate. It's easy to neglect self-care. Well, that's where therapy with BetterHelp comes in. Therapy isn't just about solving problems. It's about empowering you to become your best self and reconnecting with your inner strength. It's a journey of self-discovery and growth. BetterHelp brings therapy to you. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Gators today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Gators. One more time, betterhelp.com/Gators to get 10% off your first month. All right, before we go, here's another Focus on the Gators with Alex Shepard. Back with another edition of Focus on the Gators with Alex Shepard. And, Alex, I'm going to do a sigh, man. So at some point, it's 3 games into the season. already feeling like, the season's over in a lot of ways with a lot of games to be played. We all enjoy football season. We all love football season. And, Will and I were talking earlier this week. I was like, this is the earliest in a season I can ever remember feeling like hopeless.
Yeah, I went back and I was listening to some of our older episodes talking about this. And every single time I started talking, I started by going, and that's just continued into this week. I mean, I was talking to a couple of people on the field after this last game, and I said, this one just reminds me a lot of those games where you knew that it was kind of the end, for Mullen, the South Carolina game, I believe it was Muschamp. It was a Missouri game.
Mm-hmm.
You just have those games where you're like, you know what, like you can tell like this just feels like the end. And it's sad to say in a way, because everyone says it, everyone knows it. Billy Napier is a good guy. Everyone says he is a great mentor, a good person to be around, and somebody that you want to play for. But at the same time, I tweeted this, at what point is it acceptable for fans to boo and want change? And I think that obviously we are a great fan base. We're a proud fan base that has a history of being, loud and passionate about their team. And I think that, we're starting to see that if you're not performing within the first 2 years, we'll give you season 1. We'll start to get a little questionable in season 2, but if you get to season 3 and we're not seeing any progress, and we're going to the post-game press conference and saying, yeah, there's fundamental issues that we're still, making, and we're making mental mistakes and mental errors, and we got to coach better. I mean, you're like, how many years does it take to clean those things up? And how much of a leash should Gator Nation provide you and continue to sell out the swamp before it's acceptable to call for a change and not be looked at as like a toxic fan base, which is a ridiculous claim?
Yeah, absolutely. And I put that out too. I was like, any major fan base that has been where Gator Nation has been for the last 15 years, it's going to be the same thing. We saw it at Texas. We saw it at Tennessee. We've seen it multiple places. I mean, Tennessee got a coach fired because they didn't like Greg Schiano. I mean, before he was going to be the guy they hired, and their fan base rioted until he wasn't the guy. So don't sit here and tell me the Florida fan base is unique in their toxicity, because we're not. As you said, there's expectations. There's been long enough. And look, like you said, everything you said about Billy Napier, absolutely true. And that's coming from a personal side for me with Billy Napier as well. But at the same time, it's hard to know where the disconnect is. Like, why? If it's true that whatever you see every other day of the week but Saturday doesn't translate to Saturday, where's the disconnect? Where's the disconnect of guys wanting to, the cultural part that you put, that they love him to death? Why doesn't that come across on the field?
Yeah, I mean, the way I worded it in my tweet, but I don't know if I should call it a tweet now or a post on X,
post, yeah.
an X. I feel like it's obviously not the players, it's the playbook.
I've said many times this season, I like the talent of this team. I really do. It's not championship level. I never said it was, but it's better than
it's not. Yeah, it's better than what we've seen these last couple of weeks. They have good guys. They have talented players. I get rewarding guys who perform well in practice, but seeing Taylor Spirito out there over guys like Tank Hawkins and Aiden Mizell, who were highly touted recruits and some of the fastest guys we've had on this team in years, it just makes you scratch your head a little bit, because it makes you question the decision-making ability of the coach, not to mention all the other in-game stuff that has made us scratch our heads over the last 3 seasons. And so, it's the playbook. It's not the players. The playbook just seems like an outdated, stale, uninspiring set of plays that everyone can seem to guess what's coming. You get to 1st down and 10, you're handing it off. 2nd down, you're trying to get a pass, you don't get any gain. 3rd down, you're forced into a pass, and then you don't get any gain, and then you punt it. There's no spice, there's no flavor. It just seems like a very predictable set of plays, and it's disappointing to watch every day in the Swamp when I'm there, because I always believe that we're going to score. I have seen us score a lot, and so I typically put myself in our end zone that we are driving towards,
Right.
to get that money shot, to get the shot of the Gators scoring. That first half of Texas A&M, I took maybe 30 pictures because they did not make it to our side of the field. It was embarrassing to sit there. You hear everyone booing. After the first drive, you had people booing. So what did I do? I swapped end zones, and sure enough, Texas A&M was putting it in there. And that's a first-year coach that literally just embarrassed the Gators in the Swamp in front of 90,000 people.
With former Gator players and former Gator staff members on that staff, by the way. So, yeah, I mean, as great pictures, by the way. Alex Shepard, photography, of course. But really good images here, of course. One of some. This wasn't the first time, by the way, of some Texas A&M players doing the Gator Chomp, which has all become too familiar with opponents doing that in the Swamp lately. Alex, are you surprised Billy Napier still head coach?
Yes and no. I know that sounds like a kind of a cop-out answer.
No, for real. It's sensitive is probably not the right word, but it's there's pluses and minuses. There's a couple ways to look at it.
Yeah, I look at it two ways. Number one, it's clear the fan base, the vast majority of it at least, wants him gone, and that's completely understandable. I'm somebody who has said after this last game that there just does not seem to be a path forward. I look at the schedule, and even with Mississippi State being a team that is beatable, I'm not going to pick the Gators in a single game moving forward. I just can't see it. And I mean that as respectfully as I can, because I love this team and I grew up a fan of this team, and I'm a fourth generation legacy at UF.
You can only be kicked so many times.
You can only see that kind of product on the field and believe in it so many times. So I personally think that it would make sense to move on, but at the same time, on the other side of the coin, there really hasn't shown to be any sort of improvement for teams to fire their coach this early and then have an interim the rest of the season. As well, I believe I saw something about that his buyout is much less if they waited till the end of the season. I'm not saying they should. I don't think they definitely should do that. But
I think, but problem is, I think it's like February. So
yeah, it's really late into the cycle.
Yeah. So
and so, for me, I almost see it as like, I can see where they might wait a few games. And I think, I can't remember which coach it was. You may be able to help me with this, but there was a coach where they were like, they're going to move on from him after the season, but he continued to coach. Was it Muschamp? Or Zook? Sorry, it was a while back.
He got his win in Tallahassee. So
yeah, so I can see that being a scenario that plays out. Now, if we get absolutely curb stomped this upcoming weekend in Starkville to a team that just lost to Toledo by 20 plus points, I mean, this is the worst run defense in the SEC. If we go up there and we lose to a team that has lost to Toledo, it could happen right away. I just don't see how, because you're not going to be selling out the Swamp moving forward consistently if you're just not putting that product on the field. These are some of my favorites. That rain was a lot heavier than it looked like on TV, man.
No, I could tell too. I was in the press box, thankfully, not getting wet.
Oh yeah, so sorry for you.
But no, you could tell. And I made sure to share it too, because as you said, I don't know if you could see it on TV how hard it was, and then your photos capture it great because when you can see the droplets.
Yeah, it was soaking. It was, and I was impressed that for example, something that we could talk about as well is the whole Graham Mertz, DJ Lagway situation, which, if you recall, when we talked, you said, do you think that DJ Lagway should be the starting quarterback? And I said, no.
Yeah.
I said, I don't want you to do split series either. I think that you should put Graham Mertz in and then have DJ Lagway have a couple of packages here and there. What did they do? They did split series, and look how it turned out. And on top of it,
it's so weird. I was talking to Will about it. And you may have heard me ask Will about that scenario. I was like, I was joking. I was literally joking. I was like, well, what if they do every other series? There was no inside info. I had no idea they were actually going to do that. And that's what they actually did.
You're really the one running the offense, aren't you, David? Oh, I see how it is.
No. Do not put that on me.
I saw that coming, and you see Graham Mertz out there, and he's performing at a high level. He's 12 for 15 with almost 200 yards passing. and you're still putting DJ Lagway out there. I think he's doing it. He said it was something like, oh, we promised each guy that, they wouldn't be looking over their shoulder each drive. I'm like, but are you going to do that if one quarterback's clearly performing better than the other? You're just going to keep putting him out there because you don't want him looking over his shoulder? That's not in the best interest of the team.
Regardless of the outcome is what he said.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It just adds to the growing list of questions that I have about his decision making. It's baffling to me because if it were on the flip side and Graham Mertz were out there and was 6 for 13 and not performing well, and DJ Lagway was 12-15, I'd be saying the same thing the other way. You should keep DJ Lagway in the hot hand. I think it was like Mertz had like a really long touchdown drive.
First drive after halftime.
Yeah. And the next drive, he's out. That gives him I think that takes away from his confidence. He's like, I just went out there and I put the team down there and you're going to take me out because we have a promise going on. No, this is not about promises to your oh, I'm going to play you so you don't look over your shoulder. It's about winning games. It's a production business. And if your former and current starting quarterback is out there and leading the team down, I can see you putting him in a second drive. And if he doesn't perform on that drive, maybe throw it back to Lagway. But it's just, I don't know. It's so odd to me the way that they ran that. And the reason why I brought that up is because of those rain photos. Mertz was in there making really solid passes in the rain too. And that's not easy when it's coming down that hard. The ball's wet, the field's wet. It's actually a lot more challenging. And so I liked the heart that Mertz showed. I liked the skill that he showed. And yeah, it's just questionable. Now, to kind of add earlier, when you were saying the gator chomping thing, this image right here and the following images was happening in the fourth quarter, and they had a gator plush toy, and they were stomping on it and ripping out all of the fluff. And that's just, I don't know, it's just sad to see, man. I know it's a small thing, but and
there's Jaden Hill right there celebrating after the game as well, former Gator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people were Scooby Williams was on the air bike on the side, just kind of staying warm when the defense wasn't on the field. And you had Florida fans telling him to come back. You had every fan that was on that front row yelling at him, saying that we miss him and bro, you made the right decision. It's embarrassing. Oof. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. The swamp is also its mystique under Billy Napier. That's just, one more check mark there. It's not feared anymore. And this was after some, a big Utah win to kick off his tenure, a big win against Tennessee last year. And then since then, just absolutely nothing to really write home about in the swamp. So
we could use those guys. Did you see the image before? We could use those guys coming back.
Tease and Wilson. I mean, it'd be the days. And hey, look, that leads me into my next thought before we close out here, because of the next photo as well. Hey, look, this times out. This is good producing, by the way. That man, Ron Roberts, and another bad Gator defense. And look, that's the main reason I think I've lost some hope again, because this side of the ball, once again, and through 3 games, here it is. 106th in total defense, 407 yards a game. 105th in third down defense, 42%. 102 in rushing defense. Number 94 in scoring defense. 92 in passing defense. That's with playing Samford, who you actually held to somewhat respectable yardage. And you still are in the triple digits in a lot of defensive categories. I mean, he's leading this defense. He made an immediate improvement at Auburn last season, and another thing that just does not seem to connect at Florida.
Yeah, there's not a lot of guys that I would have thought made Todd Grantham look kind of decent, but he's managed to do it. And we used to be one of the most stout defenses in the country.
It was an afterthought too. There was a time you never worried about defense at Florida.
No, you walked in there and you said, we're not going to let these guys score a touchdown, maybe 2, and that's going to be it. And it's probably going to be in end of game, toss away, backup scenarios. We're going to shut down people, and it's not going to be a question. We have the best DBs in the country. We have some of the most fierce defensive linemen and linebackers in the country. And now, I mean, I look at the defense and I go, what guys are to be feared on this defense? Like, I don't look at this defense and go, dang, we've got a Brandon Spikes or a Tease Tabor or a CJ Henderson or like,
Yeah, do opposing offenses really game plan for anybody on Florida's defense?
Yeah, there's nothing that stands out as like that's an alpha. And I think that again, I don't think that that's the talent. I think that that's the position they've been put in on these playbooks. It looks like a weak defense. We have safety blitzes that are coming in that never seem to get there on time. It's like 5 seconds late. The ball's gone before they even cross the line of scrimmage.
Drives me insane.
I don't know why it isn't like why it isn't happening the way it should. And that seems like a fundamental thing that you could teach, but clearly the play calling has been subpar. I don't know if it's the coaching in practice. Obviously, like, the media doesn't really get a long opportunity to watch what happens in practice. For those who don't know, I mean, usually the media only gets 15 minutes to look at like warm-ups and no real big time game action type of playing. But I was with you. I bought into the hype that, given his quick turnaround at Auburn, that we would see some sort of improvement here, and it hasn't happened. It's been very disappointing across the board. I'm looking at coaches, and there's only a handful on this roster that I think would deserve to stay in a new tenure, but the vast majority just have not lived up to the hype.
Yeah, somebody posed that question to me the other day. If this, when this ends with Billy Napier and his staff, what staff members do you actually see going out and getting hired by a big? And we saw that under Mullen when he got fired. Many of those guys didn't get jobs. Billy G took a year off, I believe, was at FAU, got hired back by Billy Napier. None of those guys are major programs, major coaches at other programs, and there might be the same scenario here.
Yeah, I mean, you could like miss me with the O-line coaches. They'll probably find themselves in like high school football. I like I like Billy G. I think he's a great coach, good recruiter. I could see that being someone that might stick around, but at the same time, you almost want to start fresh with someone else. Yeah. And I'm sure that we'll have other podcasts down the road talking about this. Unless Billy Napier has some miraculous turnaround, I don't see us winning 2 more games. I think we're looking at a 2-10, 3-9 type of season.
And with Billy G, we know he's got his faults, of course, but the wide receiver group might be the best group on the team. Clearly. I love what I've seen from Badger. I love what I've seen from DK. Wilson, we know what he is too. So honestly, it might be the best group on the team.
Yeah, it's I would say by far the best group on the team. I'm thinking, the running back group, I also wanted to mention this. I mean, I think Trayon Webb might be the best running back on the team.
Man, I love the way he looked.
He looked great. And yet here we are.
No help in front of him.
Yeah, here we are with the same issue on the offensive line that we've been having for 3 years. Same coach. I mean, there's only one consistent there. The players have changed. We've gotten different talent in there, and the same thing happens over and over again. It starts at the top, starts with their position coaches, and this is starting to feel a lot like Mullen not moving on from Grantham fast enough, where you have your friends and your buddies that you want to keep around, and you stick to that rather than making the changes that are necessary.
Yeah, I've got some behind the scenes good relationships with some of the staff members. Rob Sale has blocked me on Twitter, so that's
says all you need to know.
I don't. I didn't mince words with my concern of the offensive line before the season. Got slammed for it, and I think it's even worse than I thought it would be, honestly. So
I'm with you.
Yeah. One more time.
If I do it any harder, I might hurt myself.
Alex, man, one more time. Great photos. Like you said, this might be your best series of the nothing slamming against the previous couple of games, but with the rain and having to navigate that area of it and, just kind of the story of the game. This one might take the cake so far this year. Alex Shepard Photography. If you're in the Jacksonville area, Gainesville area, whatever, Alex can hook you up. Personal photos, sports photos, all that good stuff. And Alex, what's going on in the real estate world here in Northeast Florida?
Well, we're continuing to see that trend of rates coming down, which is great for home buyers and sellers alike, who are moving and looking to find another spot in Northeast Florida. So if you want to come live over in Jax, Northeast Florida, Yulee, Palm Coast, give me a call, shoot me a DM on X/Twitter/Instagram, whatever is easiest for you. and I'll make sure that I put you right next to Dave. Right, wherever his house is, I'll put you right next to him so you can ask him all the Gator questions that you need.
Yeah, little Mansion area, South Side area. I love that area here in Jacksonville. So not a far ride to Gainesville, as we say either. So, but yeah, absolutely, great area for real to live here up in the first coast of Jacksonville. So, hey, Alex, anything else, man?
No, I mean, I just want to say, Gator Nation, be strong. We've been through this before. We know how difficult it could be, but alas, sometimes a coaching search brings new excitement. I don't know if we're going to be looking at one this week or next week or in 5 weeks, but feels like that time has come, and we just got to stay, with our heads held high and be proud of the brand and stick behind our Gators. Stick behind the players. Don't blame the players. That's my final word. Don't blame the players. Blame the playbook.
All right, everybody. Alex Shepard, of course, this time focus on the Gators with Alex Shepard. All right, great conversation there with Alex. I certainly wish we had better things to talk about, but not going to dig our head in the sands there. Big thanks to him. Great photos there. Great photos in the rain in the swamp. But certainly he'll be there for home games, so no photos from Alex this week there in Starkville, but certainly glad to have him part of Gators Breakdown. That'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining me on this episode of Gators Breakdown.